Hey, 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 Scrappy people. Tracy Reed here today, coming at you with a layout using the Cocoa Daisy Chapters collection. And you can see over there on the right-hand side that I have fussy cut out these stacks of books from one of the papers. And I'm going to use them as a border on this page. Now with this page, I am going background forward. So I actually didn't have an idea for this page before I started it, other than I wanted to play with these book stacks. I didn't know what kind of page I was going to make. I didn't know anything about what direction I was going except for this initial border direction. So I'm going to mat these books on some torn paper. I'm using the pretty ledger blue paper from the collection, and then I decided that I also need another layer between the books and the tags on the library tags on the background paper. So I decided to go again with another torn layer with this gray paper, and I think that that separates the books from the tags well enough that it doesn't look too crazy busy. I know it is busy for a lot of people. I embrace patterned papers in my scrapbooking. I know that a lot of people use solid colors as their backgrounds, but I really love all of the pattern and making them work together. So I know it's a lot for some people, but for me it was enough of a separation that it looked good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and put these on the outside of this paper so that it is 12 by 12, just using another 12 by 12 paper as a guide to make sure that we have the right dimensions. Then I go ahead and trim it up as needed after I've got everything down. But now we've got a really great set of 4 columns of those library tags right down the middle of the page. I decided to add some messy-ish stitching to the rows, and I created 3 stitching lines all the way down on each of those colors, and then I went ahead and added a secondary line of stitching to the book paper. You can see it right there. It's that zigzag stitching just for some textural dimension. And then I'm going to use the stencil from the Creative Kit and the ink from the Creative Kit to create some blotches, coffee ink stain blotches on this page. And that was literally the only direction that I had when I started this page. And you can kind of tell, or at least I could kind of tell, that that was the only direction I had when I did this page, because when I start actually making the page, I struggle a lot with placement, especially when I'm like, oh yeah, I have photos that will match this that I literally took that same day and had forgotten about of my husband reading. So because I started creating this page without the photos, I had to completely pull it up and rework it. Not the background, but the way that I had started laying photos and things down. So I cut out a lot of that process just because it was a whole lot of me doing things that didn't end up on the page down the line. So what's the point in showing it? But you can see I kind of have some layering going on here, and I'll start some more layering too. I want to use these book pages, and these 3x4 patterned papers were like a placeholder for photos, even though I didn't know what photos I was going to be using yet. So I'm just sort of imagining photos here with these background papers. But the majority of it does mostly stay the same. I don't get to use that tag that I created on a reel on my Instagram page, which I will link in the description box. I created a set of 4 tags. I really, really loved that tag, but in the end, the composition of the page and the way that my husband is looking in the page just made it so that I wasn't able to use that tag, and that made me really sad. Especially since it matches the page so well. Oh man, I wish I could have worked it in, but it just didn't work out. So I'm adding these photo corners from the Creative Kit as well. I believe they're from the Creative Kit. If not, then they're from the Scrapbook Kit. And here is where I cut out a bunch of the process that just didn't pertain to the video. So we're going to pop forward with photos, and you can see that my husband is looking to the right. And so for me, visually, I just cannot abide by him looking off the page. He has to be looking into the page. So that means that my photos have to be on the right hand side of the page. So that was a struggle. I had to pull everything up and it just didn't make sense anymore with the composition that I had already started working. But that's okay. You live and you learn. And then I learned that I need to have a photo in mind when I start the process. So you can see that I'm just kind of sticking things down, but nothing is going to really stay where it is because I was trying really hard to have sort of a clustered like central composition, playing off of those ink rings or those coffee rings and creating 3 different clusters, but it just couldn't work with these photos and my OCD about the direction that he's looking. So all of these are just not going to stay where they are, and instead I'm going to create a diagonal composition across the center. So reworking literally everything. I'm going to remove, this is my happy place, and mount it on this teal instead. And then in the end, I still have him looking off the page, which it just felt like all for naught. Except the way that this composition ends up working, it works to the best of my ability. It works to, it works. We're just going to say that. We're just going to say that it works. Now, this could have worked, except I just didn't love it. But this composition could have worked. And I'm letting you go through this whole process with me just because I know that sometimes, there we go. Now we're starting to get it. But I know that sometimes it's good to see the whole thought process, the whole the struggle bus moments for scrapbookers. Even me, who this is my job, I do this on a regular basis. I scrapbook more than most people and I still struggle sometimes. And I think it's good to see that even the quote unquote professionals struggle sometimes. So I decided we needed more inking on this page, so I am adding some ink to both the notebook papers and the photo squares. You can see he is still looking off the page, but because of the diagonal composition, it works better than any sort of other cluster would have with him looking off the page. Plus, I make it work with the embellishments too when I start embellishing. So we get there. In the end, it's not perfect as far as, the eye direction, but it works. So once I stop inking, we can start embellishing. I think I turned off the camera at least a dozen times to think for this page alone. It's so weird how sometimes it is just a struggle to get the page done, but I do love it and it works out pretty well. I love that these colors are sort of masculine too. I don't have a lot of pictures of my husband reading. Reading and writing poetry is a hobby that he has taken up recently. He's really great at writing poetry, but he loves reading other poetry too, and he supports a lot of his friends with the poetry that they write, so he's been buying a ton of poetry books. So I was super glad to have this sort of masculine-ish book collection for these photos of him reading. He was literally reading a poem out loud to me, and I just liked the way that the scene looked as I was standing on the chair, so I just snapped these photos unthinking. And then when I went to go make this page literally the same day, I still didn't think of these photos when I was scrapbooking. Now, if I had thought of them before I started, we could have avoided all these problems. But all right, we're coming together now. It's working for me. I've pulled out all of the embellishments. All of the embellishments that I think will work. So I had to switch to smaller tags, but I really liked the animal on that tag with the glasses, since my husband's wearing his glasses, which he despises having to wear his glasses. But we're to that age now where he's having to read with reading glasses. So I liked the glasses on the little animal. I do have this library pocket, but again, just like I did on one of my previous layouts, I am taking it apart and just using it as a layering piece behind that tag here, trying not to cover up too much of the ink splotch. And then I just want to create a diagonal composition to go with the direction of everything. So I'm just making sure that my clusters are working with the diagonal instead of against it. Working against it and like having a cross clustering would work too, but I think working with it, especially with that photo of him looking off of the page, works a little bit better in this instance than working against it. I want to leave some of that label out so that I can use it as a grounding place for word bits later. I'm going to cut this off so I don't have to stick it behind that poor photo with those book pages that are just torn to shreds back there because I had to pull it up for so many times. So I don't want to stick anything too far below there so I don't have to pull it up any further. But I like the way that that library tag looks, or library card looks, with the tags in the background. Deciding if I want it there or there, but I think we're going to put it right back where I had it before. If I can peel it off. Don't bite your nails, kids. Okay, get this under here, and then the library tag, and that'll give us another place to add some clustering. All right, this composition's coming together. I finally like this page. It was driving me nuts. I like the repetition of brown with these two word bits. The brown card and then the two brown word bits work out really well. There's also the brown book plate. I also use pretty much the same color brown thread for my stitching too. I'd rather be home, that new book smell. Now we're going to pull in some stickers and some die cuts of the little critters in the collection. I like this little guy who is hiding under the book. He's not going to end up here. There he is. He's also in the paper, so that repetition of bringing him to the foreground instead of behind everything works out really well too. And then this little guy is going to go here, and I'm going to move him about a dozen times before I'm happy with the nesting over there. And then I was going to add this chair because he is in our little throne in our living room. I love that egg chair so much, but it just doesn't really fit well with the composition of the page, so no there. All right, we moved the fox, or I don't know what he is, raccoon, squirrel. We've moved him once. Well, maybe we want books here instead. Nope, that's too many books. Too many books. Ah! What are we doing? Nope, the books are not. It's gonna stay. Put the animal back. Okay, so that's 3. Maybe 4 times we've moved him now. Maybe not a dozen. Maybe we'll get it right this time. Having to nest him between that photo corner. There we go. Leave him there. The photo corner and that word bit so that there was no white space was a struggle bus moment for a minute, but we got it. I'm going to use 2 of these little sentence bits that come in the memory keeping sticker sheet. Cozy space, do not disturb. I like the way it looks like it was handwritten on there on that library card. Some word bits. I'm going to put this one down here. And that's going to add to the title. So I'm going to add these little letter stickers here that say, or that are blue, and it's going to say poetry. So it's going to say poetry reading list, talking about his love of poetry. Are you a poetry girly or person? I guess not all women watch my videos, I'm sorry. But do you love poetry? Okay, so I don't know. This might make you think less of me. I love his poetry. I love how excited he is about poetry, but poetry has never really been my thing. So I love that he has this reading interest that's so divergent from mine, because I read all the time. I read over 100 books a year, but never poetry. So I love that he's collecting all of these poetry books that he just loves so much. And it's such a different interest than mine. But do you love poetry? I've just never been a poetry person. I don't want to think that hard. My brain, when I'm reading, I want my brain to turn off. I want to enjoy the story and not have to analyze it, I guess. All right, I'm adding some chipboard here. Warm tea, good book, soft pillows, fine company. He also likes tea. I'm not a tea person, so that was perfect for him, because every time there's tea references in these collections, I'm always like, what am I going to do with this? But he loves tea, so that was perfect for him. Add another one over here just for fun. And then I'm getting close to done here. I'm liking the way that this is coming together, but I do need somewhere to journal. So I'm going to add in some journaling strips. I thought maybe I would add craft, but I didn't like how different that brown was than the brown of the card. So instead I'm going to take a journal card and I'm going to cut it into strips. And I want these to have sort of like vertical washi. So I'm going to cut it in half and then trim it down so that there are 2 journaling strips. And they're going to be thicker than the normal size journaling strips that I normally include, but I actually really like that. I ended up adding 2, and then they look really good right there, so I like it. I'm going to ink up the edges as well, and then I will add my journaling off camera like I always do, because I gotta stop and think about my journaling, what I want to say. But I really like the way that the inking added to a lot to this page too, especially with those rings in the background. I think it really pulled the whole thing together, made it look very cohesive. I'm so happy with this way that this page turned out. I was so concerned when I started it. Well, at least after I got past the background portion of it, that it was just not going to come together. But we made it, folks. We did it. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. If you don't already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Tracy M. Reed. I'd love to see you over there as well. There is an affiliate link to Cocoa Daisy in the description box below if you are interested in starting a subscription. And I will see you next time. Thank you.